I actually, um, sorry, I had a little note there. Through this research, I actually discovered the path of licensing and had never heard of it prior to this, and it seemed really cool to me. So, most of you probably know what licensing is all about, but if you don't, here's an overview of what that is. When you license an idea, it's your idea. So most of the time, you continue to take ownership over your intellectual property, and another company or entity will pay you to utilize that property. This is not an overnight get rich quick type of thing. It's essentially like they're renting the idea from you. So like if you have a home or a garage or a shed or anything that you own that somebody can use and they want to rent from you, it's the same concept. But what they do is they can actually help you launch it too. So you aren't responsible necessarily for the manufacturing of a product. Sometimes deals still work out if you're already selling your product and you're already making it. But if you're not, companies will take you on when it comes to manufacturing for you, packaging, marketing, selling, and distributing it for you. But it's not for you, it's for them. They're going to brand it under their brand because they already have those resources. So it's easier for them to do that than it is for us to do it because they're already doing it with other products that they have in their product line. So you benefit because they take on all of those hats that you don't know how to do. And then they pay you a royalty on every unit sold. Again, not something that is not an overnight get rich quick thing, but if you're a creative person, it's a convenient process because you get to work on your creative side and then they work on the business side. Now remember, every agreement is unique. And so I strongly advise that you seek some type of guidance when it comes to going through this process, though, when you get to that point, if not earlier, in order to get to that point. So that way you have a nice deal that helps to protect you, where you can get out of it if you need to, or that you're well taken care of during the intro. Now, next, when I was doing that research and I came across that coaching program or the idea of licensing, I joined a coaching program and it really helped me quickly to execute the process that I needed to in order to get in the game. All right. My situation was a little bit different because at that time I was a stay-at-home mom and I only focused on this. So getting to a deal within 3 months is very fast. And that's not the norm. It can range all over the map. There's not like an average range. It just kind of depends on the amount of effort that you put into it, what your product is, the category that it falls into, and all of those details. But I was, from start to joining this coaching program to executing the steps that I was told to do, I had a contract on the table within 3 months. And that involved learning that my disposable product shouldn't be disposable. It should be reusable because it was too expensive for the disposable market. But for the reusable market, for reusable coffee lids, it wasn't too expensive. Okay. So keep that in mind. You need to pay attention to your market, disposable versus reusable. Learn who you're supposed to call. A lot of people will call retailers, so for instance, if I didn't know any better with my coffee lid, I'd be calling, which I still am calling Starbucks, but not for this purpose. But I'd be calling coffee retailers, and they don't license ideas. It's the people who they buy product from license ideas. So if it's a consumer product, especially if it's a reusable coffee tumbler, then you would be calling companies like Mr. Coffee, who was my co-brand on this product, which you'll see at the end of it. who sell into Walmart, Target, Bed Bath and Beyond. They sell into the retailers, but the retailers are not the licensees. So it's important for you to understand the difference on who the players are. I learned how to protect my idea. So I learned how to write a fairly decent provisional patent application on my ideas, what the ins and outs were. So that way I had at least a 12-month patent pending status on my product. And, back in 2013, I believe it was, they changed the law from first to invent to first to file. And so I'm not sure what you guys are familiar with when it comes to that, but you've probably heard of like the inventor's notebook, or if you have an idea, you can write it down, mail it to yourself, and then you have that postage stamp on there and you don't open it. And that used to be able to somewhat hold up in court. And now that's not the case. You have to file within the United States Patent and Trademark Office with your idea to prove that it was your idea first. But the great thing is that it's not that expensive to do. You just have to know how to do it. And it's also pretty simple. And there are a lot of programs that are available, including the USPTO offers a program to teach you how to do that. So in that way you can cover yourself and have something filed. So learning how to protect yourself for at least 12 months, you can always add to it, file something again if the idea evolves. But that's super important. And that's something that made me feel more comfortable. I know I wasn't across the board like, hey, this is mine, but it made me feel more comfortable, and it makes a lot of my students feel comfortable, because a lot of us creative people, like, we get our favorite ideas and we kind of, it's like holding on like too much to like the baby chicken, like where you're suffocating it, right? And we don't want to do that to our ideas. We want to make sure that people see it and we see the product flourish, right? Like we see them grow. But if you don't protect it and you don't let people see it, it's not going to grow. So that was very important. Learning how to present my idea. You want to have a sell sheet and or a video to present the benefits of your idea. Benefits are super important. I always refer to these presentations as your billboard advertisement. My mom actually is a partner with a small billboard company in my area where we live. And it's so important. Like you need to know the colors. You need to know the font. You need to know how to connect with your targeted audience as quickly as possible. And for sell sheets, in my opinion, you want to try to get to them within like 6 to 10 seconds. You have to be quick about that. Videos, very rarely are they going to be longer than a minute long. So depending on what you're working on, 30 to 60 seconds long. You want to get there quickly. And you're focusing on the benefits, not necessarily the features. So that helped me too. And then also learning how, who to ask for when you're calling companies, when you have all of that ready, learning who to ask for. A lot of people will say, hey, they don't even know what to say. They call companies, they get nervous, and they say, can I talk with product development? Or can I, and product development is kind of like flipping a coin, in my opinion, because sometimes they love us and sometimes they don't like us so much, because they think of us as like we're doing their job for them. And so you never know what you're going to get over there. Sometimes it's easy to work with, sometimes it's not. So knowing who to ask for, you want to ask for the marketing department, period. Marketing department. If they have a different submission process, you're not going to be able to argue with that. You have to follow it. But there are other tips when it comes to submitting that can help you to kind of get around that if it's an area that you're not feeling the most comfortable with. And then how to submit your idea. So I learned how to call, what to say. Once I get the information and what their submission process is, then how to follow up with submitting. So if it's their online submission form, then I know how to do that. If it's an email, then I know how to do that. that type of thing. And then you want to make sure to follow up. So all of these worked very, very well to get foot in the door. The problem that I had for this situation came next. So just for your reference, it looks like my internet's unstable, so I hope that it stabilizes for you guys. I'm trying to do my cell sheet, and we may be able to connect this with people to be able to download later, because I'm really fine with that. But this is a portion of my cell sheet. I can't see the whole thing.
We can see it.
Can you guys see the whole thing?
Yeah, we can see
okay. So this is the cell sheet that ended up working for me. This was not the first one that I had sent out, but it got the point across. And because the reason why I put 4 different competitors on here is because my industry in this space is extremely saturated. So there are a lot of coffee tumblers here. And so I had started out with one, and they're like, well, why do we need a new one? You know? And so I had to show them why. And that's what I did here. And then I'm not sure if this video will play, but I'm going to try if that's okay with you guys. This was my marketing video that kind of sealed the deal, seemed like. And this is not the way that you always do marketing videos, by the way, but this one happened to work as a newbie. Otherwise, we'll include this later as well. So I'll put that in at the end when you guys are asking questions, the link for the video. Okay, so submitting for a contract. There's a whole process with that. I'm a big player in the numbers game. And so I had put together a list of companies that amounted to 84 companies. And they fell into 3 different categories. So one was travel, one was coffee, obviously, and one was kitchenware. And there were 12 companies who expressed interest. 2 made offers. One was actually a smaller promotional company, and then one was a huge, like, international kitchenware company. And so I went with the larger one. Then they offered me, when they offered me the contract, it was a few days before Christmas. And they were ready to, like, put together samples before the trade show that following year, which was just a couple months away, which, Lisa, you probably know, rarely ever happens when it goes that quickly. Usually it's like a year around, right? Yeah. And so they wanted to get all this stuff together. Well, I was offered a split percentage because this company specifically, they specialized in licensing brands, but not innovation. Mine was the first trial run for innovation, creating something new. They mainly did, like, ceramic bowls and lids and cups and stuff like that. And then they'd license out brands like Tupperware or Mr. Coffee or whatever. They had a ton of Pioneer Woman. They have all these brands that they do, and they make stuff that everybody has, but they just put the brands on. So mine was like a trial run to see how it went, and I was excited for that. And so I tried to get into Mr. Coffee when I was pitching, and they wouldn't even answer my phone calls. But then when this licensee called them and said, "Hey, we want to put your name on this," they're like, "Sure, that sounds great." So that's another thing to talk about at a later date, that it's like, you know, if you have a relationship or you have an in, it also makes a difference. They were willing to pay me a recoupable advance of $10,000 or up to, in order to file a non-provisional patent application, but they didn't even care about that. It was something that I wanted in order to be able to file a patent that I couldn't afford at the time. And they were willing to do that also, which I thought at the time was super cool. But we didn't have any minimum guarantees, so they could basically leave the deal whenever they wanted to. This is at the trade show. The company didn't want to pay for the valve. So the valve that I had a portfolio of patents on it. and they were selling about 17 cents, as I mentioned, per valve, and even with the reusable version. And the company did not want to pay for that. They wanted to try to work around it and see if they could reduce costs. So because of that, it took longer to make. Because of this, we didn't know for sure if we were going to at all at the trade show. Like, they literally were delivered the morning of the day of the trade, which to me dramatically, because I didn't know for sure. You know, it showed up, and but they didn't work because the valve didn't work. They didn't design it properly, and they also put it on side down, which this valve is dome shape, and it's dome shaped for a reason. And so even if it was shaped properly, if it was upside down, it wasn't going to work. So we couldn't hand them out to anyone. But even with that being said, people love the design, they love the concept, and the big box retailers like Target, Walmart, Bed Bath and Beyond, all these guys wanted to purchase my product, but they couldn't because they didn't know that there was something wrong. So next problem is the new guy. Unfortunately, fortunately, I had a really great relationship with my point of contact within my licensees organization. He was absolutely awesome. He was my cheerleader there, and he's the reason why we got as far as we did. But then he gave me a call. It was after the trade show, and they said that they were going to try to fix the problem. Time went by, and then he gave me a call and said, "Hey, I'm switching companies. I'm going somewhere else." And as soon as I got that call, and he didn't need to call me personally, but he did because we were friends and we had a relationship, and that's important. And he said, you know, as soon as he told me that he was leaving, I just had a feeling that this was no longer going to go further. And then the new guy steps in, and my project was the first project that he said, we have to trim off the fat. Like, let's get rid of it because this is not what we specialize in. We do brands, we don't do new technology. And so my deal was done, at least with this company. And obviously I was angry, but you know, because it had been like two years of working with these guys, but it was out of my control, and there's a learning experience to have there. So on the latter part of this presentation, I have at least 10 lessons that I learned. You always want to make sure to do your research all around and in every step of the way, okay? You want to know your products. You want to know if your product exists, what your point of difference is, all of that. You need to know that. You need to know the people and the companies in your space, in your micro space, okay? Your subcategory, and how they operate, because you need to know what their behavior is in order to be able to behave well with them. Be comfortable asking questions. If you don't know how to find questions, then you need to do more research. Because if you don't know enough to be able to ask the right types of questions, then you're not done with your research. So that's super important. And don't feel like, a lot of people try to, you know, they kind of base themselves on like fake it till you make it. And to a certain extent that can be helpful, I guess. But like but you do need to know your product, and also being humble goes a long way, and a lot further than people think that it does. So if you say, like, if somebody mentions, you know, some type of like acronym to you or some type of term that you're not familiar with, you can kind of gauge the situation. But like if someone says MOQ and you don't know what that is, it's kind of hard, like based off of what your experience is, but like minimum order quantity, right? Like, so what's your minimum order quantity? If someone asks you that, what's your MOQ? Know that, please, because there are a couple different things going on there. One, if you're trying to license your idea, they don't understand that you're trying to license it. They think you're already selling it, and they want to know how they can buy it. What are the numbers? What's the minimum order? Can I buy 5,000 units at $2 a piece or whatever it is, depending on what you're working on, okay? So learn basic terminology. You need to know that. When you have interest that's generated, you want to make sure to stay on top of them, okay? You don't want to be a pest. Don't be that annoying inventor, but always make sure to be present. I always refer to it as like a polite pest. Like, you know, like, so you're not like checking out, like you're not knocking on their front door at home, right? But at the same time, you're following up with them every couple of weeks, depending on where like the process is. So make sure that you're not giving them too much space, but at the same time, you're not being a stalker. You gotta have a balance. Don't assume your licensee knows everything. Like with my situation, like I thought it was perfectly fine. I thought it was perfectly fine letting them try to reinvent this valve. And because of that, I feel like that's one of the reasons why I lost my deal. The spill-proof valve. So because sometimes with these larger companies, larger doesn't mean better. Remember that too, because there are too many chefs in the kitchen. A lot of them don't know their right hand from their left. So you need to be the mediator. You have to stay on top of them and say, and ask the right questions. Be wary if they do try to take shortcuts or they try to work around other people's innovation. It doesn't mean that they're bad people if they're trying to do that. We're all doing that. We're all improving new ideas based off the majority of them, 99% of them are going to be based off of products that already exist and we're improving on them. We're essentially working around that. But if a company is saying, hey, we're going to try to figure it out in a cheaper way, be wary of that. That's kind of like caution there, because that can slow down the process. Because if people have a portfolio of patents for something, there's a reason for it. Build your network. Don't lean on just one guy in your licensee, in licensee's company, okay? So you might have your main cheerleader, but ask to be a part of group meetings, ask to get to know more people. So that way, if that guy leaves, you're not just kicked to the curb. That helps. And also, if that guy does leave, maybe you have this team still over in your back pocket, but then that guy can take you to the new company as well, you know, and you expand your network. It's very, very important to build friendships here. Understand that even after like you design your idea, your product is going to continue to evolve. Whether it's throughout your pitching process where you're getting the feedback from companies, you don't have a deal on the table, but people are saying, hey, we like this, but the manufacturing process is way too expensive. The materials you're using are expensive. If you can cut this down, or you can change this, or you can change that, you always want to get feedback, but your ideas always continue to evolve. And they can also, even after you sign the deal. Okay. And then next would be, make sure that you're not taken advantage of. So circling back to like day one for me, you know, those manufacturers knew that I didn't know what I was doing, but I feel like they felt like I could source money, like I said, to pay them, and they were going to take me through the ringer. And there are a lot of other companies that do different things, offer different services that will charge large amounts of money. So you always want to make sure that you're doing your research, especially now we have Google. I mean, it's hard for people to get by ripping people off without having a bad name, right? So I always recommend, no matter what I'm involved in, Google the name of the company, followed by reviews, followed by complaints, and see what you find before you spend don't give anybody any money until that. I mean, you're going to have to invest money one way or another in order to learn and to be successful. You need inventor. You need to be an inventor. You need to have resources for prototypes, and you need a mentor. So those are necessary expenses, but you need to know what that expense is worth. so you're not taken advantage of. Like I told you, I've worked with hundreds, if not close to thousands of inventors where I had one lady who spent over $40,000 and she had nothing to show for it with a company who just robbed her. So be careful. That made me feel very sad for her. And that was not my company, by the way. Don't think that you're going to become a billionaire overnight. So for my joke with the rom-com thing, I mean, I didn't think I was going to be a billionaire, but I thought that, hey, it'd be easy to just whip up this prototype and I can make a couple million real fast. Nope, didn't happen. Learned a lot along the way. So have realistic expectations and then continue to support your licensee after the deal is signed. I feel like I dropped the ball on that. I had my contract and I just thought that they would just take it and run with it. And they dropped the ball too. And so you can always continue to help fix problems, try to identify what those problems are. You can help to sell after the fact if they allow you to on their behalf, if the idea needs to be improved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just be a team player. So those are the main takeaways there. And then I just have to say that just always remember that the success of your product isn't always going to follow your time expectations. So like I said, it's not going to be overnight. It could be a couple months. It could maybe be a year, maybe even a little bit more than that. It depends on what the product is, how complex it is, and the industry that you fall into, and the amount of time that you're putting into it yourself. And it just life in general, external factors are going to contribute to your journey, but embrace those and make every obstacle an opportunity. And the best takeaway, in my opinion, is that the deal is never done unless you agree that it is. And lastly is just a thank you to everyone. Lisa, Lloyd, thank you for bringing me on tonight. It's very much of an honor, and everyone for part of this community for welcoming me, and I hope that you had something to take away from it.